if you're going to disobey that, okay, you need real power. You need the ability to disobey that and not have the arms of the state come and smash that down.
How do we as ordinary citizens build sustainable social and political institutions in South Africa? This is a question that I posed to Russell Lamberti, an economist with the business advocacy group Sakeliga, in a recent episode of my podcast, Solutions with David Ansara. If you would like to watch the full conversation with Russell Lamberti, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description below. Enjoy. But the classical liberal conception of the state is also this night watchman state, the minimal state, that focuses on a few key areas: maintaining law and order and the rule of law, protecting the sovereignty of the state itself from external threats. And surely the problem is just that the state is, as we started in this conversation, gotten too big. It's gotten too involved in the affairs of individuals. It's been captured by a rapacious elite, which is very ideologically motivated. Now we're seeing the hegemony of this dominant political party, the ANC, starting to break down. And these last elections, I think, were a very telling example of that. And we're also seeing, in parallel to that, the rise of a lot more pluralism in our political space. There's a lot of small interest parties, local interest parties. There's a fracturing of the opposition, but it's also grown in aggregate terms. So surely, this is the process of the democratic maturity that's underway, and removing that dominant group from the levers of power of the state, introducing much more kind of pluralistic, coalition-driven kind of model of governance that might be able to better express the very heterogeneous interests that exist in South Africa.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I think broadly your observation is correct in the sense that I think that the structure we have now in South Africa is just simply unsustainable. It doesn't jive and mesh with the social realities on the ground. And I suppose that's another important concept for people to try and take away from this is you can have a political structure, and then you've got a social reality. And the degree to which those are misaligned, you're just going to have unease, unsettledness, conflict, political tension and volatility until that structure aligns with the reality of the society that you're in. So that's what South Africa is going through. The transition from the apartheid regime to the democratic constitutional order in 1994 to 96 was a way to start doing that. And I think people need to see that transition as in some respects very progressive, in the sense of creating real progress towards doing this, towards creating this alignment. But unfortunately not going far enough. And having elements within it that actually start to maybe perpetuate a pulling apart again of the political structure and the social reality.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CIA.
So if we criticize the present order, the straw man is to say, well, we're somehow harking for previous apartheid era sort of stuff. I mean, no. The issue is how do we now get the political order so that it matches the social reality? That's the next challenge we have, and it's everyone's challenge. It's not just the challenge of Afrikaners or English South Africans or white South Africans or Indian South Africans. It's the challenge of all South African communities to be starting to think in this direction. So I think as you rightly say, I think through the electoral process that's starting to happen. Now, I think the electoral process is a very inefficient, very slow, and very kind of low traction way to achieve this, but it's a way, and it's a way that this is starting to express itself. I think, you spoke about the classical liberal conception of the night watchman, small state, and of course, me, Dave, I'm very, very much in line with small government. But the real question is, how is it that governments are allowed to grow? Because any bureaucracy, any government institution has a tendency to grow. I mean, this is just a simple fact of history. Governments grow. And when do they stop? They stop when they hit real opposition, not when they hit sort of de jure textual opposition in some written constitution, or some judge rules against them in some particular matter, and, so on. I mean, those are very temporary and sort of toothless ways in which state power and sort of elite power is checked. And as many historical sort of political realists have noted, the only thing that ultimately checks power is power. And so what do we mean by that? In a South African context, in any kind of state context right now, I think what you've seen is the loss of alternative centers of power. In the old Greek classical literature on the Republic, the idea was that you had several real centers of power. You had a demos, you had a democracy, but you also had a kind of aristocracy. You had a landowning class, and it wasn't a one man, one vote system. It was a system of real balanced powers. I think what the sort of liberal conception of the state then tried to do, and you see this in the American Constitution, was take that good idea. We all recognize that power should be diffuse. When it's concentrated in a few hands, no matter who they are, right wing, left wing, capitalist, socialist, it ends badly generally. So we want diffuse power. And so what we did is we wrote a kind of synthetic separation of powers into our constitutional orders. So we will have courts, and we will have a legislature, and we will have these sorts of things. And I just think that those, depending on the social reality that you face, those are quite weak at actually constraining the growth of the state and actually allowing real alternative centers of power to develop. So I think what South Africa has to do is, by all means, vote different parties in and create electoral illegitimacy for the government. No question. I think that has political power and purchase at some level. I think it's a slow process, and I think it's an imperfect process, but it's a process. But I think at a much more fundamental level is communities, again, in South Africa, whether it's cultural or other, need to start building real institutions, getting real funding, and starting to actually build alternative centers of power. Now, that's not of some kind of sovereign authority where you then will go and attack the government in some sort of civil war. That is creating oppositional, real, actionable opposition, not just political party electoral opposition, but real in day-to-day life opposition to various state policies and directives. And yes, that includes the ability to start engaging in civil disobedience for manifestly unjust and destructive laws. We have a rule in South Africa that says you can't produce energy beyond a certain level and sell it into the grid without all kinds of permissions and without all kinds of things. And you're basically we're barred essentially from producing energy for ourselves. Okay, and to my mind, that's intolerable. That's unjust, and but if you're going to disobey that, okay, you need real power. You need the ability to disobey that and not have the arms of the state come and smash that down and close that down. Okay, so you've got to actually start creating kind of real power opposition. Okay, it's subversive, but it can also be done in a very legitimate way, and in a way that follows tried and tested principles of what we would call constitutionalism, drawing on ancient principles of law, and actually opposing unjust state laws in that way. So I think people have to be thinking about that in addition to the electoral stuff. Dave, the electoral stuff that you cite is certainly nice to see. It was great to see the ANC going very, very low in the Western Cape and getting sort of rejected in large parts of the country. But it's going to take, I think, a lot more than that, particularly if the ANC starts to go rogue and actually, disobey the electoral mandates that are given by the electorate. That is a risk that I think we have to plan for that scenario, and continue to build alternative mechanisms of order and centers of real power.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this discussion with Russell Lamberti and you would like to watch the full conversation, you can do so by clicking here. And I'd also be grateful if you could subscribe to my other channel that's linked over here. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, take care.